Good morning, everyone. My name's Jed. Indulge me for a minute. I think I'm going to start with a quick prayer. Dear God, please set aside everything I think I know about myself, and about unity, and the people involved in unity, and about all spiritual things, especially you, God, so I might have a new experience and an open mind with all these things. Amen. Thank Reverend Karen, wherever she is, on sabbatical, I think, for asking me to do this. I got to do this one time about a year ago. I feel like it was about a year ago I got to do this, and I think I started the same way then. I'd be remiss if I didn't do it again this time, because it still remains true this morning, and it came to me while I was in meditation. With a little bit added, I had a grandmother, like most of us do, right? And wherever her spirit is today, the fact that I'm standing in a church delivering any kind of message makes her extremely, extremely happy. And I know I want to thank my beautiful, fantastic job up here this morning. And another thing that came to me, and Kirsten and I have had several long conversations about my grandmother and her grandfather, who was a minister. And as I was sitting there this morning, I couldn't help but think that both of them, wherever their spirits are, we're very happy with the current state of affairs in our particular lives. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of that. I came to Unity for the first time 1,890 days ago. And I know that date because 56 days ago, I got married on that same date in this chapel. And that day, 1,890 days ago, is when I met my wife here. And I've been an active participant in this congregation. You guys have given me the honor of serving on your board for the last couple of years. I hesitate to call it a privilege sometimes because it's an extreme inconvenience a lot of times. But I'll tell you this. That's just the honest truth. I'll tell you this, though, and I know this about my own personal life. All the growth I find are in the things that I don't want to do. Every bit of it. And serving you guys under that capacity has been a joy, and watching some changes that have happened around here. It's just been a blessing in my life. I feel an extreme, extreme sense of loyalty and gratitude to Unity for what it has done and continues to do in my life. And so the only thing I'm qualified to talk about as far as spirituality relates to anything is me. And my particular practices and what that looks like in my life, and hopefully that's a demonstration of what is possible. And I don't come to spirituality from a place of walking towards the light in my life. I come to it as a place of running from the fire. And the fire in my life came in the form of beverage alcohol and a lot of other things, and it took me to a really, really dark place. And through a whole set of events, I ended up in Augusta, Georgia, a little over 5 years ago, January of 2019. So I hadn't been here long when I stumbled across Unity of Augusta, you know? And man, what a change in my life. Not only Unity, but the other spiritual practices that I practice in my life, and without breaking any of those traditions, you know, the 12 steps have revolutionized my life in the way that I look at spirituality and my relationship with this God that I have no idea what is happening most of the time. The conception of what that looks like ebbs and flows and grows and shrinks and changes and does all kinds of things. And you guys, Unity allows me to have the space to do that, and encourages that. One thing that I do know, and I know this with 100% certainty, so if you don't hear me say anything else this morning, there is a power that floats around this universe. It's active in my life, and I have the ability to tap into it at any point that I so choose, as long as I can get me out of the way, I am the only thing that ever blocks me from power. Not you, not my mama, not my daddy, nobody, right? Nothing. Not the people at work who aggravate me. I block me from power constantly. And I need that reminder and the meditations here and the conversations Kirsten and I have in the mornings in our spiritual practice. These things help me get Jay out of the way enough, hopefully, to make me useful in the world. Because when I become useful, the pain that I feel is gone. When the suffering has a purpose, the suffering ceases. A great mentor of mine taught that a long, long time ago. And so that's one of the things I think kind of the direction I want to go. I made some notes. I do this from time to time when I get asked to talk. I never use them usually. But there were two things, I think, as I was thinking about it this morning, that really drew me in when I got here. And it was 3 and 4 in what Kirsten read this morning. It was that I, and I'm going to change the wording a little bit, that I am a co-creator with God, with this power, with this spirit. Through my thoughts held in my mind, I'm creating this. And I thought back to my life, which was a relatively good life. You know, I can't say that I had opportunities and I knew I was loved and I knew I was cared about. And I found myself in these horrible, horrible positions a lot of times, doing really mean things and selfish things. And I just remember, as I reflect back on that, how I thought about myself in those times when I was alone. You know, I knew I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't treat people that way. I shouldn't think like this, on and on and on. And I perpetuate this cycle as I look back. And through tragedy in my life, right, I was gifted an opportunity to come to a place not too far from here and hang out with a bunch of guys in the woods for 6 months. And the guy demonstrated, you know, he demonstrated the principles in the 12 steps to me. And oddly enough, as I've studied spirituality over the last 5.5 or 6 years really intently, those are universal principles that most of the people that I've ever known that were spiritual in my practiced. And I've thought about this a lot over the last 5 years. I had a grandfather who died a few years ago. He was 102 years old. He served in World War II. Nobody ever knew he served in World War II till he was 80 years old. He won 5 Bronze Stars, French Medal of Valor, like all this stuff. And he never talked about it. He came back to South Carolina, told me a story one time. He came back from the war and he hitchhiked home. Like he dropped him off and he got on a little truck and he started this little business and started to raise this family, and the business did well, and so he thought, well, how could I serve people? And so he went into local politics in this little town, and he served them, and he served our family. And I watched this my whole life. And it wasn't until recently that I thought, like, in conversations and Kirsten and I have had about her grandfather, similar men, different circumstances, similar character. And I think when you're exposed to that, no matter how little or how much, that stuff lives within me somewhere. And I know that place in me that knows, like, has an example. Like, life wasn't easy for this guy. Lost a daughter. And gosh knows what happened over there in the war. He served other people, you know. And then I was thinking about how that leads into the fourth one, right, which through prayer and meditation, I align my heart. Interesting that it starts there first, right? I align my heart-mind with this power. And I would add, and I'm only going to add this because it's true in my experience, I would add to the meditation and prayer part daily self-reflection. And I only say that because this is a consistent practice that I have and have had for almost 6 years now of daily self-reflection, meditation, and prayer. And there's not a single activity in my life that is any more beneficial to me and to you, whether you know it or not, than that. And the self-reflection piece for me is pretty easy. It was presented in some other spiritual work that I do. It's 11 questions. I answer them every morning. I send them to 4 people. I send my answers 4 people because I know that those 4 people will challenge me on those questions, and then I'll have to be transparent. I'll have to get uncomfortable. And my experience shows me that all the things I want are in everything I don't want to do. Everything. Everything that I want to do and have in my experiences, in the things that I don't want to do. 1,890 days ago when I came here for the first time, see that in this other little spiritual world that I live in on a daily basis as well, part of what they talk about is prayer and meditation. And so I thought, well, I guess I better learn about that. And I was a 44-year-old guy living with a 19-year-old kid over here in an apartment on Washington Road because his parents didn't want him to be back in Atlanta where his mom was running for political office, and I was kind of a mentor to him. And I'm living with a young kid who's old enough to be my son. My life, I'm just rebuilding this life, and it looks like a mess, and I don't know how I'm going to fix it. And I come in here to meditate one Sunday morning, and I hear you guys read this stuff and start to have some conversations. And I'd love to tell you all that's why I came back, but I met Kirsten, and so I came back the next week to see if she was going to be here. And man, we started this relationship and this life and these circumstances that there's absolutely no way I could have designed. There is no way I could have written the script. This young man that I was living with gets in a lot of trouble one day, and his parents send him back to a recovery center, so now I have my own place. And not only was it my own place, but I have 2 kids, right? So I had this, my children were able to have a place, and we were able to start to build this relationship. And Kirsten and I are building this relationship, and, you know, we start these practices where we sit together in the morning, and I answer those 11 questions, and I send them, and she has the spiritual autonomy to challenge me on those things and ask me, you know, what I'm doing, how I'm doing. I've given her that. She's had to use it a few times and never like it when she asked me that. What do you mean? But, you know, and then we talk, and sometimes it's very impactful and meaningful, and it feels a certain way, and other mornings it's mundane. And we're there, but we're there with each other. We're holding space. And so we've created this, she feels supported and I feel supported and our children feel supported and our lives come back together. And so, and all that starts with our 4th, you know, it's in my life, it starts with that. It starts with my attitude in our 3rd, right? My attitude. Through knowing that I'm a co-creator. I am going to create. I'm going to create. So what do I want to create? I don't know about anybody else, but I created enough turmoil for 2 lifetimes in the first 44 years of my life. For myself internally and externally for everyone around me, and I don't want to create that energy anymore. And so I try to be positive. I try to think positive. When I'm in a situation and I can't, and that happens a lot. It happened this morning. After prayer, after meditation, after conversation with Kirsten. I got to give this talk. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. People are sad around me. I can't fix this problem, and there's this going on, and da-da-da-da-da. And so I put my shoes on, and I went on a 2.5-mile walk. And I looked around this neighborhood of destruction, and I saw a flower. And then I looked over in this other spot, and there was another flower, and these are my favorite kind of flowers. They grow through concrete. You've ever seen that? It was popped right up through, and I love to see that. I walk most mornings, and I try to look for that. attention for that. Think about the perseverance to give you this beautiful thing to grow through the concrete. And I think that's what we're doing, a lot of us, especially in this community, currently, you know, with the storm and and I think about lots of things as it relates to the storm, because I work in an industry where I work in the recovery industry, in the treatment world, where everybody's in tragedy, and that doesn't stop because the power's not on. People still need to come to treatment, and people still need to get to detox, and how do we navigate that? And so it's been a lot over the last few weeks, and then we have this little house here in town, and there's 6 or 7 guys living over there, and they're putting their lives back together, and they got no power. And I'm watching them come together, and I'm watching needs show up that in the morning I'm afraid, I'm living in fear. Where's this going to come from, and where that's going to come from? And Friday, I'm driving to McDonough to get a generator for the guys, and I'm thinking about, gosh, man, now we got to put gas in this thing. And then just bing, 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 my phone, email, like 3 emails back to back. It's a nonprofit we have, and you got a donation. You got, like, everything we need shows up, and the things get taken care of. And I know that doesn't happen if my thought life is in the swamp. It just doesn't happen. I think about the tragedy that was the storm, and Kirsten and I were in Columbia, South Carolina, moving our son into his first apartment. It was Thursday. We got back to the hotel room. Kirsten turned on the Weather Channel and fell asleep and left me horrified. No, it left me watching, and I'm watching the storm, and our 19-year-old daughter is here, home by herself. And I'm watching this storm wall. We're in Columbia. She's asleep. It's about midnight. And I'm watching this storm wall, and I'm like, that thing is going right over our house. Like, do I wake her up? And knowing her, she's going to wake up in a frenzy. We're not walking that one back for a while, right? What if the storm hits Columbia? We have one child here. We have one child there. We got a mom here. We got a mom in Greenville and another daughter. I mean, it's just people all over, and they're all right in the track of the storm. And I'm frozen in fear. And I asked for the right thought and the right action, and I just sat there. And you know what I did? I sat there and I watched that storm on television, because I knew that the right action in that moment was not to wake Kirsten up. That was clear. And as I watched that storm get closer and closer, the phone rang, and it was our daughter. She was here, and she was in her bathroom in the middle of the house as this horrifying storm is going across, and we're watching it out the hotel window. She's okay, and everything's okay, and the house is okay. And that's not the way we want to teach her that she can do hard things. If I'm looking for the good and the positive in things, she's a 19-year-old child trying to figure out who she is in the world, and she did a big, hard, scary thing. And it was okay, and she had support. We were able to support her, and we instantly came home from Columbia, and we picked her up. And the first thing that I noticed when we pulled up to the house, actually the first thing Kirsten noticed, she's the noticer, I'm not a details person. She said, babe, if your car would have been parked right there, it would have been crushed. We walked into our backyard, and there's a gazebo area back there and a fire pit. It's a vision Kirsten had that she wanted a while back, and we got that gazebo put up. It's where I proposed to her. Everything about that area in that backyard, the hands that built it, that touched it, that did it, are guys in recovery, young men early in recovery that were given an opportunity to feel useful and make some money. And so there's this spiritual energy around that area. And the trees in our backyard are everywhere except there. There's a glass table on the inside of that gazebo. and Kirsten does a lot of her practices out there, there's a feather that she uses to smudge stuff with. And the feather's still sitting there. Now, what had to happen for that feather to still be stuck to that glass? Like the rain had to come at a certain angle to get the feather wet first so it would stick. And then the wind had to blow in a different direction so it wouldn't blow it away. There's a sober living facility that God has entrusted me and 2 other men with to look after these guys. And so my immediate next stop was there. It's about, 2 miles from our house. And there's no trees anywhere around the house. The house is perfectly fine. The guys are all fine. They can't go to work. But we immediately, daily supplies back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. We get them a generator. They still don't have any power. They're still in good spirits. One of them works at Food Lion, so they're back at work and they're being able to be helpful. But you know what happened? When we got home that morning, before we left Columbia, I called those guys. After we knew Catherine was okay, and I knew Kearns was okay in Columbia, and my mom was okay in Greenville, I called those guys. And I said, guys, we're in Columbia, and there's gas here, and there's power, and there's food, and whatever you need, tell me what you need. And like good early people in recovery, if you know anything about people early in recovery, they wanted nicotine was the first. Can you make sure we got some cigarettes and some Copenhagen? Okay, we got it. And a chainsaw. Can you bring us a chainsaw? And I said, I thought you guys said there was no tree damage around the house. We can be useful if you bring us the chainsaw. And I know from my own life that the second you guys, Unity, the rooms of 12-step recovery, Kirsten, my children, the second you give me the opportunity to be useful, it's the greatest thing you can give me because it gives me purpose. And it allows me to have these thoughts that I hold in my mind that create my life remain positive. And it gives me the ability to do what I hope to do every day to the best of my ability. And what that is what I heard a dear friend of mine, who's a dear friend of mine now, a gentleman named Terry from Arizona. I was out in Alabama at a monastery with him a few weeks ago, and he said this over and over throughout the weekend. And so I've stole it from him. So Terry, if you're watching this, I'm going to take this. And Terry said for the last 31 years in his life, he's been looking for the good in the God, and he's been finding it. So thank you, guys.